Well, welcome to everybody joining us in the kitchen. We're thrilled tonight to have Aaron Nola. This company Mustard, we're like half Los Angeles and half Philly. So it's no coincidence that we got Clayton Kershaw. Now we got Aaron Nola. I live in LA, but my name's Rocky. So we got Dodgers and Phillies fandom flowing through this company. Aaron Nola, we're particularly thrilled to have him. We try to be really intentional about the folks that we're recruiting to host classes here. And Aaron's somebody that we feel really strongly one of the best pitchers on earth for young pitchers and coaches and parents to learn from, both in terms of his mechanics, some of the things that he's been really intentional about developing mechanics we think are going to be really impactful for you all as you develop, but also just the way he thinks through pitching. I think you all are going to learn a ton from him tonight. We're really looking forward to it. Just to share a couple of kind of his accolades, although I'm sure you all know them already, but he's somebody who grew up with his dad as a coach. Obviously his brother's in the big leagues too. So maybe we'll get some of the golden nuggets about what their dad was like as a coach for you parent coaches in this class as well. Drafted 22nd round out of high school, goes to college, national pitcher of the year, Golden Spikes finalist, first round pick, 7th overall pick of the draft to the Phillies out of college. So looking forward to kind of chatting about that process for him going from 22nd round to first round in just a few years. Obviously he's been an all-star, top 5 in the Cy Young multiple times, including 4th last year. And obviously great run in the playoffs last year with the Phillies making it to the World Series. Aaron, honor to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on for the first time. I'm excited.
Yeah, cool. We're looking forward to doing this one and more to come with you in the future. We got a question from somebody in the class right now that I thought was a great place to start. I already mentioned 22nd round out of high school, first round out of college. We got a lot of young athletes on this call that are kind of wondering, when should it show up if they've really got what it takes to play at the next level? So for you, is there an age you could identify where you can remember feeling like, hey, I got what it takes to play in college, or I got what it takes to play professionally?
Yeah, guys, whenever they think and they feel they are ready. But for me, it was toward the end of my junior year. We had just won the state championship in high school. I guess I was 16 or 17 years old. Played shortstop at the time as well, kind of moved all around the field. I always knew that pitching was my number one. I was always better at pitching than I was in the infield than I was in the outfield. So that was obviously going to be my number one spot, my only position going into college. And then I started to get some, college teams that looked at me, and then some pro calls, and you go through that process. And I knew I wanted to just pitch, and I knew I had what it takes to pitch in pro ball. But at the end, looking back at it, I wasn't ready. I'm really glad I went to college. Just because I learned so much over there. I had 3 years to learn a lot, to play against better competition than you do in high school. Most of the guys, all the guys in college are pretty much your own age or a couple years older than you, especially when you start out. And to me, the most important thing, it teaches you how to win, because college is all about winning. At least back when I played, it was all about winning, and really nothing else mattered, obviously. So that taught me to learn how to win, and then prepared me for pro ball. So like you said, I got drafted in the 22nd round out of high school. Very glad I did not go from there. And then first round in college. So got to play with a lot of guys in college, play against a lot of guys in college that I face now in the major leagues.
I always felt like college baseball for me was, I learned how to be a good teammate, learned how to be a leader. And then in the minors, it's almost like your teammates are your competitors. In the minors, it's almost like you don't have teammates. I imagine that switches when you get to the big leagues, but was that your experience, kind of college to minor league ball?
Yeah, college to minor league ball, I guess. I was blessed not to spend too long in the minor leagues, but yeah, I mean, you want it to be a team sport, and baseball is a team sport. But when you're going through the minor leagues, you are trying to get to the major leagues. So you don't want to be selfish, obviously. And there is a way to not be selfish and get through the minor league system and get to the big leagues. And that's what I try to do as much as possible, just because that's how I learned in college. That's how I learned in high school, is to not be selfish teammate, and pull for your teammates, but get your work in and do what you have to do to get to the next level. And if you do that, you can definitely get to the next level.
Well, look, I think there's an important lesson in what you just said for the young pitchers in the class. Here's a guy at the top of the game now, and it wasn't until he was 16, maybe 17, that he felt confident he could play at the next level. And even at that age, you're playing multiple positions. So did you play multiple positions all the way through high school?
I did. I played before high school. I played the outfield, and then, as I told you, bigger, stronger, faster guys came in the outfield, playing on our travel ball teams, kind of pushed me to the infield. My brother played the infield his whole career, up until now. He's catching now, so he taught me a little bit how to play shortstop, third base, and moved there. Did that all of high school and played there. Started in when I was a junior and senior. I started shortstop, and then obviously had to make that transition to just pitching in college, which I was excited about because I didn't have to worry about fielding ground balls, hitting, and pitching at the same time. So getting to do that for the first time in college was pretty cool.
And at that point, you brought an athleticism with you that you developed from playing all those different positions. I think that's it's important for folks to. And so is it right? You had your dad as a coach up until high school?
I had my dad up as a coach up until high school. Yep. He coached me. Wow, I guess 9 years old was the first year, and then every year up until my sophomore year of high school.
Well, look, there's a lot of parents that join these classes with their young athletes. Any tips that you think they could take from the way your dad was as a coach?
My dad was pretty hard on me as a coach, honestly. Looking back at it, I'm glad he was, because he knew I was better at times than what I showed on the field. So that's why he was hard on me. There was a lot of times it's either yelling at me in the car or not. There wasn't a word spoken on the way home. So, but for me playing for him, the hardest part was playing the outfield and infield, right? Because I was not as good at those positions than I was on the mound. But when I got on the mound, I had this confidence that I was better on the mound and I felt more comfortable than I was in the field. And he knew that too. So we've had our instances on the mound too. He actually took me out. I'll tell the story. He took me out in 2 tournaments when we were 11 years old. And I know the young ones right now that are in the 11, 12-year-old age group playing like the major tournaments. So we had just got moved up to major tournaments, and my dad put me in the pitch, and there was a third to first move, and I faked a third. The guy got in the rundown to first base, and I kind of ran at him, and the guy at third went home, overthrew it. He took me out. Not to a year later, did the same thing, threw it to first. The guy faked a third, threw it to my first baseman. First baseman threw it home, overthrew it. Guy was safe, took me out and the first baseman out. So I always buck heads with him because saying you brought me in to pitch, not to do these third to first moves.
That's great.
But I love him for him. He was hard on me, but he was a good coach to me.
Well, I think that's helpful for the folks on this class to hear that sometimes when you're going through this process, young athlete and a parent, you're going to butt heads, but sometimes it's for the good in the long term. Yeah, and the chance to go through these things as a family, and I had the same experience. We're all super grateful for that in the long term, and it's a really lucky thing to be able to do. Well, I want to dive in on mechanics because it's something that a lot of the folks in the class are really anxious to learn from you about. And I know from talking to you that it's something you're really smart about, really thoughtful about. We have a few mechanical variables that people can track in the Mustard app that we want to dive in on in detail. But before we do that, you've described really thoughtfully before kind of the journey you've gone on with your mechanics and even some of the things you ended up working on once you were a professional. Maybe you could just talk generally about kind of how your mechanics have evolved over the years.
Yeah. So my mechanics have changed. My arm slot has changed a little bit over all the years. I used to throw a little bit more sidearm leading up to pro ball when I got to the minor leagues. I was more of a fastball pitcher, all four seams pretty much. Ball ran um, rather than a true four seam straight. So,
Mhm.
like we talked about, everything. My head was straight. My arm was super sidearm. Like sometimes I look at the pictures and I didn't know how sidearm I was, but I always tried to get on top of the baseball, and I could do that with my hand. So if anybody tries to tell y'all to get on top of the baseball with your arm, you can always get on top of the baseball with your hand. How far you release the ball in front of you, you can backspin it. So even a sidearm pitcher can backspin a baseball true, which nowadays that's what I want. I don't want the four seam to run. That's what the two seam's for. That's why they call it a two seam. That's why they call it a sinker. The seams take care of that. The way they catch in the air is the way it moves. A cross seam, also a four seam fastball is to me meant to bend fast and get the late jump. And to me, that's more effective. So over the years, I was more of, like I said, the ball running, and then threw a little bit more two seams when I got to pro ball, and then got caught up in 2015. Mixed it in a little bit, four seam and two seam, and then 2016, I threw a lot of sinkers. So my ball was sinking at that time. My stride was really short, not really short, but it was shorter than it is now. Um, Fast forward all the way till July, ended up getting hurt, almost blew my elbow out, had a partial tear in my UCL and my inside of my elbow. So I rehabbed that, and not really knowing, once I started throwing, my stride got probably a foot longer, and my arm side raised a little bit, not much, but a little bit. So I started using my legs more. My velocity started to creep up a little bit, and I didn't know that until the rehab coach had put a video on me and said I was dragging my back foot more. So that was a whole new process for me, trying to, I guess, pitch a different way, trying to go all in on throwing a four seam fastball straight. I'm not a guy who throws 95 to 100. So I wanted that 90 miles an hour to 90, get up to 95. I wanted that ball to jump fast. I wanted the hitters to say that 90 looks like 94.
Right.
That 4 looks like 97. That's what I wanted, because I'm not a guy who's going to throw 95 to 100 all the time. So that was my process. That was a blessing in disguise, honestly, for me to get hurt. It took a lot less stress on my elbow to use my legs, and brings me to another point. Is I've always heard it coming up is coaches say use your legs. Pitching coaches, they always say use your legs, but they never tell you how to use your legs. So it wasn't until that day I got hurt that I learned how to use them, because I had to take stress off my arm. And then, like you said, you had Kershaw on here. I watch Kershaw a lot. He's obviously got the more deliberate delivery, where you can see, as a pitcher, you want to lift your leg, go up, down, and then out. You don't want to go up and out. That's what I did in 2016 when I got hurt. So if you go up, down, and out, you can actually lengthen your stride. If you go up and out, your stride is not going to be as long, because you're going to go down the slope like this. And I still have problems sometimes with that. I still try to go up, down, and out always. And Kershaw does it. You want to look at somebody who does it to a T, he does. So, and obviously not everybody's delivery is going to be like him, but that's works for him. But that's the concept. If you want to know more about up, down, and out, or want to learn more about that, watch Kershaw pitch and watch him throw. So that's the guy I look to a lot, especially just throwing in the outfield and then bullpens.
Well, I think it's really useful for the folks in the class to hear about kind of different feels that you've tried throughout your career, and guys, go home and try the same feels he's talking about, and use the mustard app while you do it, because the mustard app will tell you what your stride length is, right? So let's see if you can use Aaron's feels, get your stride length a little bit further out, take that stress off your arm, make sure you're keeping your balance metric really good as you get to release point, the same way Aaron does. I'm curious, you talked about wanting to make sure it seemed like the ball is jumping to hitters, and 90 seems like 94. Do you ever think about the fact that it sounds like after the injury, you're releasing the ball closer to home plate? Is that something that mattered?
Releasing ball closer to home plate, yeah. Yeah. I think if you see a lot of sinker ballers, a lot of their strides are shorter. You know, I got a couple of sinker ball pitchers that I played with. Their strides are long, but not as usual. So when you try to bat, for me, when I always think about this, what you just said, trying to backspin the baseball, you have to get farther out. You have to try to release the ball farther out in front of you, and that's what creates the ball that maybe not as hard looks harder. That's what creates the ball that looks heavier, feels heavier. So, um, yeah, that's the whole process of that's playing catch every single day, trying to do that. Right.
Yeah.
That's the big. I guess that's the big man for fastballs. It's
Yeah.
trying to get far out with your finger staying on top of the baseball.
Yeah, we're going to get more into fingers on top of the baseball and four seamers and two seamers. For now, I think we're going to look at actually some of your mustard stick figures, which you probably never seen before, but we're going to show them to you. We've run some of your video through the mustard app and created what I think are some pretty cool stick figures that really highlight some of the mechanical elements that you're super elite at. And let's start off by looking at some of this and really thinking about the drag line, since you talked about that. So as this plays, Aaron, maybe you could just talk a little bit more about, as you were really working on lengthening your stride, what were you specifically thinking about with that back foot dragging, or in your words, as you're using your legs, what were some of the other cues for you?
That's pretty cool, by the way. So the longer your stride is, the more you're going to drag. When you have a short stride, it's hard to drag because your back foot will come up off the rubber pretty quick. And that's what I was before I got hurt. My stride was shorter. My back foot, I never use a pitch and toe. And 2016, I still never used pitch and toe just because I didn't like them. It felt heavier. I'm kind of picky with like my cleats and all that weird stuff, is kind of some pitchers are, but yeah, the longer your stride is, the more you're going to drag, which means the more you're going to stay connected to the ground, which is better. Because for me, if I'm stride is longer, back foot is dragging, staying connected, I can see the ball better. My head stays more in line. If my back foot comes up, my head tilts a little bit. It means I'm falling off to my left a little bit. But if I'm back foot stays and my head stays straight, I can see the ball. I can see the flight better. My eyes are behind it rather than on the side of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So look, for folks using the mustard app, I think this is really important. You get the automatic frame of yourself at release point when you're using the app. Click on that frame, see if your back foot's on the ground. Okay. It's a yes or no. It's something to be super cold-hearted with yourself about. If the back foot's off the ground, then you've got this opportunity for improvement that Aaron's talking about, especially if you're somebody working on your balance variable, which is your spine angle at release point. If you're failing that variable, you're doing what Aaron's talking about. You're pulling your head offline. Probably your back foot is off the ground at release point, right? So Aaron, Tom House, obviously our co-founder, always talks about, you want that back foot to drag for the distance of 2 to 3 of your own feet, but right from wherever it is on the rubber directly to the middle of the target. And because the other thing sometimes would happen is, like, if you're tilting off like this, maybe your back foot stays on the ground for a little bit, but it would kick out to the side instead of dragging straight.
Yeah.
Is that kind of the way you'd think about it too?
Yes. Also for me, for my delivery, if I step too across my body, it's hard for me to drag because my back got to swing more. But if I'm straight and my line is good, it's easier for me to drag, which ultimately keeps my head on line, keeps my eyes behind the baseball.
So it seems like the main cue for you is kind of with the head. The head is sort of causing everything to fall in line with the legs. You're thinking eyes in line, head behind the baseball, and that
For
clicks things into place.
sure. I'm the one. I'm a guy who's always been step back, gloves here. I get tendencies to turn like this a little too much, which I can't really see as good if I'm turned. So I always have to try to stay in the middle of my body. Even if my left leg when I lift turns, keep my body straight. So when I do that, I can open up a little bit quicker or stay closed, but my head opens up a little quicker. I can see the plate more, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
It makes total
But
sense.
but if I'm turning too much, I can't see as well. But if I'm straight, I can see my neck is relaxed, my head's relaxed. So
Yeah.
that's all I think about, and I learned that from a lot from Zach Wheeler. Zach Wheeler does that really well. Everything's in between his chest, straight. He's super behind the baseball. That's a guy that drags a lot. He drags
Hmm.
a lot. His back foot, almost his ankle touches every time. So
Interesting. Yeah, it's the way you're describing it. I hope you'll take this as a compliment. It's very similar to the way Nolan Ryan described it. He talks about riding the baseball, so staying behind it, and that's his phrase, riding the baseball. He also talked about, David Bednar talked about this too, using his front arm as a sight line, which I think is part of what you're saying, is that everything's in between, but you're looking over your front shoulder or maybe your front elbow towards the target.
yeah, it's all about line, keeping that straight line.
Mm.
I wouldn't overdo it if you're just trying to learn this, but if you're a guy who likes to turn, likes to step across your body, try to do something to keep your head on line. Uh, I always thought for guys trying to throw across their body, stepping across their body, it's always hard to throw the ball to their glove side because I used to be like that. I experienced that, and it was hard for me to do that when I was that far across my body. But once I straightened everything up, um, but you'll hear staying over the rubber, keep your head over the rubber. That's when you start learning how to use your legs. So your knee will be over the rubber when you're striding out,
Hmm.
which ultimately stays over there, which you're using more of your glutes rather than your knee. So when I use
Right.
my knee and I bend my right leg, I tend to go across my body. When I use my butt and my hamstring, I tend to go more straight.
Well, let's stay on that for a minute, and we'll kind of finish with the lower half, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the upper half a little bit more. But Cole, if you don't mind, can we look at the side view stick figure one more time, and let's look at Aaron right as he's coming into leg lift, and go back to his point about gathering a little bit and what he's thinking about and feeling as he starts to move to the plate. See, Aaron, one thing I think is interesting, if we maybe go a couple more frames forward, Cole, as he starts to move forward, yeah, like right there, as you're thinking about your movement towards home plate, you do, I think, in my amateur opinion, a beautiful job of you're in an athletic position always. And so the back knee right here, you can tell it's a little bit bent. And one thing
Mm.
Tom's always harping on our young pitchers about is they can make a huge improvement just maybe by bending their knees when they're in the set position, as opposed to trying to be super stiff and then bend their knees later. And I think that's the point you're making a little bit, is that if you get into that athletic position here, your stride length is going to naturally increase, right? If you're trying to go with a straight back leg, then you're not going to get out as far. Is that
Yeah,
accurate?
yeah, good to bend a little bit. Good to bend a little bit. I bend too much sometimes, which
Mm,
if I bend too much sometimes, it means that I'm trying to make the ball do more too early.
okay. And
So
is this the point in the mechanics where you think you would bend too much if you were going to bend too much at all?
correct, right when I'm going down. Yeah. So I always think about, especially in the windup, you can be as slow as you want in the windup. You got all the time in the world for starting pitchers and relievers, young ones that just on the stretch. For me, get up to my gather. So when my leg gets to my highest point, then start going down and then out. So gather is a huge word for me. So Once I do that and get to my highest point, my leg and my arm, my glove, then I can start to go, rather than right before I get to my gather, I start to bend. That's where my upper body starts to slant a little bit. That's where my arm lags a little bit. Ball doesn't jump. So once you get to your highest point, then go.
Yeah. So look, I think this is really important for the pitchers and coaches listening to understand what he's saying here. And this is kind of different ways to look at your mechanical variables, right? I mean, here's somebody who's got a huge leg kick, really likes to feel gathered in the windup before he's going. But as he starts to move forward here, the hip, I mean, right about there, he would pass the lift and thrust variable on the app, right? Like the angle from his back ankle to his front hip. It's pretty significant there. He's moving fast towards home plate. He's easily he's gonna be at the elite levels on stride length. His timing is gonna be elite, and so he might have a couple, fractions of a second there where he's not yet started moving towards home plate. But if you're to take kind of a holistic view of his mechanics, he's somebody who's GFFing, as we call it. It's go friggin' fast, to go forward fast, Aaron. So that's something that he's doing in spades. Maybe we can go back and talk a little bit more about upper half mechanics. So we've got a pretty cool video of you.
Before I start,
yeah, please, yeah.
If y'all look at that stick figure picture right there, it looks like the hips going out first, right? So another good way to, because you'll hear a lot, lead with your hip, but if you actually turn your foot inward, try to lead with your heel, your hip will turn in. So rather than, the pitcher's trying to lead with your hip, think about your hip, try to think about your heel. It's a little bit easier. Try to lead with your heel, turn the foot in if you really want to get your hip to stay closed. Because I'm a guy who I walk kind of penguin toed.
Yeah.
My hips go. So I'm open all the time. So I always just try to think of my heel. Close my toe, lead with my heel, which ultimately closes my hip.
I think that's really good. Cole, can we see that from the front on the stick figure one more time, and then we'll go to the video of him actually throwing? Yeah. So let's look at the how closed his hips are as he comes forward here. He's going to go into foot strike, and maybe we can pause it. Foot strike. I think this foot strike shot is so important and cool. So here he is, his front foot's just landed. Now the hips have started to open, Aaron. And look, to Aaron's point, thinking about the heel, I'm looking forward to hearing people report back after they try that. But because he's kept his hips close along, now the hips are like flying open with speed, and that X, that foot strike that you can see in his torso. So his hips are starting to open and his shoulders are still super closed, and it's creating an X of his torso. By the way, this is going to be released soon in the app, where all of you are going to be able to see your stick figures at this point. And you can click on the foot strike frame and see what you look like there. If you can get an X like that, that means you're smashing the torque retention variable, which is really, really good for velocity. But yeah, Aaron, any more thoughts on this? Like when you get to this point, foot strike, now the hips have started to open, shoulders are still closed, head's dead on line. Any feels for that moment?
Yeah. Hand speed. Because after this, once you go open, think about hand speed rather than arm speed. For me, arm speed's good, but at least on the ball late, hand speed is more effective than arm speed. Because to me, if I think about arm speed, I'm throwing it too early, if that makes sense. I'm trying to make right. If a curveball, I'm throwing a curveball too early, trying to get on the fastball too early, which ultimately can make the ball go up, run a little bit, not staying behind the baseball. So Zach Wheeler is a great example of that. I watch him do it all the time. Super loose all the way until that last second. So yeah, once you're here, at foot strike, which is obviously going to be one of your more what's the word? I guess brutal part of your delivery. Think of hand speed.
That's a great one. I don't think we've heard that before, but I love that. So it's it's a key that's helping you stay relaxed a little bit longer. And then in your words, it's almost like you're throwing late. We talk a lot about sometimes young pitchers try to throw too early. And so you thinking hand speed helps you throw late.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
And I mean, you probably heard it all the time. And, you know, I've done it all the time, trying to throw a fastball as hard as you can, right? You try to throw it too early and the ball doesn't go where you want it to. And then sometimes you look back at the scoreboard and you see that velocity and you didn't think you threw it that hard. You were smooth, and that was actually your hardest one of the day. So be smooth last second, be aggressive the last second with your hand.
I used to try to throw a lot of fastballs too hard, and I'd be looking back at the scoreboard for different reasons. Those are not good. Cole, can we see the one video of Aaron from home plate, that not the stick figure, but the actual video? I just think it's, to hammer the point about him keeping his eyes level and just all the feels he's talked about. I think this is really helpful to see. So we'll see this coming all the way through here. But Aaron, maybe you can just talk to us about what you're feeling in your head as this progresses. Can you see that video? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe if we go back to release point here. Yeah. Let's
yeah. I always try to keep if I'm using my legs right, my upper body stays somewhat level. I was never a guy whose upper body was like this. But if I'm not using my legs right, I'll lean down, which will make the ball go a little too arm side because it has to catch up. But if I'm kind of level, I can stay more behind it. That's where it comes in at that part of the picture is fingers on top. The wrist can be like this rather than like. So this is to make the ball run, to make the ball jump.
Well, let's talk about. I mean, first, let me just say, I think this picture. I think we're going to put this up on our Discord. I just think that for young pitchers out there, this is a great shot to emulate. Right, eyes are dead level. Glove front side is firm, and in front of them, you'd be passing our swivel metric. Back foot is dragged directly towards the target. In Aaron's words, he's really behind the baseball. So this is like people should make a poster out of this shot right here. And then Aaron, let's start talking about the grip. So I don't know that we can tell whether you're throwing a 2 or a 4-seamer here, but are you saying that for both the 2-seamer and the 4-seamer, are you feeling like your hand is on top of the ball, or is it a little bit different feel for the 2-seamer?
Yes, no, same feel. With the 2-seamer, it's really easy for you to try to make it move, which should be the complete opposite. So if you're seeing your 2-seamer move or your sinker move, it's probably not doing what you want it to do. So my most effective 2-seamers are my glove side, because I really am better at that side of the plate than I am arm side, because I just stay behind it more. I try to backspin the baseball. So this is my grip right here. It's just a traditional 2-seam.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more of a runner. So that's just how I've always thrown it, like that. But I just try to backspin it straight to the glove.
So on that grip, you got some of both seams there. You don't have one finger off the seam, some of both.
But when I throw it, my fingers will spread a little bit, so they're just kind of on the inside of each one. So they're not all in the seam. They're just kind of like in between.
Inside the seam. And then can you show folks where the thumb is at?
Yep, the thumb's just kind of right under it.
Yep, side of the thumb, not the pad of the thumb. That's always important for younger guys.
Yeah. So yeah, it just depends. So that's just the way I throw it. Some guys, if you want it to sink a little more, you can go up a little bit. Maybe you can. I know some guys throw it. I get a good angle right here. They throw on the seam. They do one finger on the seam, one in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a little more run.
Mm-hmm.
But one of our sinker ballers a couple of years ago told me, if you want the ball to sink a little bit more, move up.
Wow.
I'm actually Sorry, other way. Move
Hmm.
down.
Okay, that sinks more.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
didn't feel right to me. Felt a little different, but I'll stick with this one.
So then the only difference, two seamer, four seamer for you is the grip, throwing it exactly the same.
Is a grip. Yes.
And then the four seam grip, is it super traditional?
Yeah, just super traditional. Just cross seam. I always
Mm-hmm.
start that this seam curved just feels better than this way.
Mm-hmm.
Just because my ring finger catches this seam too much.
Right.
So this way feels a little bit better. I got a little smooth area right there. But yeah, thumb's just neutral, not like this.
Mm-hmm.
Some guys do that way. Just doesn't feel right to me.
Same spacing of the fingers.
Yeah, about the same. I've actually moved them in over the years. I used to be just like that all the way back of my hand, which is kind of not as traditional, but just kind of moved it just depending on the baseball and stuff like that. I always try to find the biggest seam right here.
Would you say you're gripping it loosely or tightly?
Yeah, kind of mediocre,
Mediocre, comfortable.
loose. Yeah, yeah. Change up's more loose. Um, Same as the curveball, but I never grip anything super tight early, just because I don't want to be tight too early coming in my arm swing. So
Oh,
loose, kind of what we talked about, loose, and then last second get on it.
very interesting. That's the same for all your pitches.
Yeah, same for all the pitches. Yeah,
Would you say a changeup is that a different feel through release? Like, are you trying to be looser with that through release?
yeah, looser all the way into the end. Just kind of whip it with my hand. So I think about my hand and whip it.
So then look, I think, for younger pitchers listening to this, coaches, parents, thinking about developing pitches, right? And by the way, this is kind of the kickoff call for we're going to start a full clinic on developing each type of pitch and thinking about what younger pitchers should be doing at different ages to develop different pitches. And one of the most important things we hope young pitchers learn is how to throw different types of fastballs, right? And how to mix those up. So for you, as you were growing up, were you more of a two seam or four seam guy like in high school and going into college?
All four seams. Didn't throw a two seam fastball until my sophomore year of college.
Okay. But you had natural run with the four seam, I
Had
guess.
natural run with the four seam. Yep, two seam. Just I was never really taught the two seam. Only the four seam. I had good command with it, so I stuck with it. Didn't really need it just because I had that run.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I was just a fastball changeup pitcher, honestly. Changeups evolved differently over the years. It used to be really good just because I don't know if my hands were young and my fingers are really, really loose and flexible. So I used to throw like a fork ball,
Mm,
kind of weird. I used to throw a
like a
fork ball.
pitchfork.
It used to come off in between these two. I guess kind of like a split finger.
Mm,
Uh, and then I didn't throw. I kind of stopped throwing that much when I learned a good curveball in college. So I was pretty much fastball curveball, and that's when I just threw a two seam just right down the middle. Let us do its thing, and it was kind of new. It didn't feel that comfortable to me. So I started doing it a lot, obviously, and then picked up another changeup, which was a four seam changeup, which felt horrible at the time to me, and then got to the minor leagues, and the seams were smaller. Always
mm-hmm.
threw my curveball like this, where I had no space in between my hand, and
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't good. It wasn't sharp, and then saw somebody throw a spike curveball, and so I tried it, and I got one guy in one of the games in the AA when I was in Erie, Pennsylvania, to kind of buckle, and ever since then I kept throwing it.
Very
So
cool. Well, I think your story kind of developing the two seamer is important for folks, right? Because a lot of times we're trying to force development of certain pitches that maybe aren't natural for folks. And so it sounds like the run for you, it's something that you learned to kind of harness and enhance maybe as you progressed. But it's not like you ever worked on developing a pitch that ran when you were a younger pitcher?
No, no, that's just how I threw it. I always tell younger pitchers, fastball first, change up, command your fastball, throw change up, command those, and then work off curveball. I know a lot of people are throwing sliders now. Curveballs aren't as popular as they used to be, I don't think. But can't go wrong with a fastball changeup. Start with a four seam or cross seam fastball, and then move on to a two seam if it feels good, and then a changeup. So that's always the recipe for success of a good arm, a healthy arm. And then if we want to get into talking curveballs, I know a lot of people think curveballs hurt your arm, but they don't. If you throw it right, they will not hurt your arm. Throw it like a football. The spin will take care of itself. So,
well, throw it like a football is something we harp on a lot, but for lots of reasons. But no, that's interesting. Look, I think regardless of whether certain pitches are safe, like your point is, you can focus on developing just a couple of pitches. There's always this like sense at the younger levels of athletics that you're going to get left behind, but it's not it's a long game. It's not a sprint. It's a long game.
There's nothing wrong with having two pitches and three pitches. There's nothing wrong with it. If you're locating those pitches, that's more effective than having four or five pitches that you can only locate one or two.
Yeah. We got a good question from somebody in class right now on the two seamer from Anil. How do you think about controlling your two seamer? So if it's starting in the middle of the plate and running to the outside, or sometimes you're even, if you're going glove side, you're, I guess, starting it all the way like in the left-handed batter's box. How are you thinking about that target wise?
Yeah, so I get that a lot, especially with a left-hander in the box. When they say just throw it at his hip, but I don't ever think of throwing his hip. That's what it looks like from TV perspective. But I just try to hit the glove. Honestly, backspin it into the glove. The seams will take care of the movement. The air will take care of the movement. So if you backspin, if you look at a two seam that's thrown correctly, you'll actually see when it spins, you'll actually see this part of the baseball more. So you'll see it go like, you'll see this seam right here as one. So you'll actually see two seams rolling. So sometimes when you don't throw it as good, you'll kind of see it wobbling like that. But when you do throw it good, it'll go just like this. And you'll see those two seams spinning consistently. And that's when it catches and it moves.
So I think there's a really important point here. I mean, you've talked about like seeing the flight of the ball, visualizing the flight of the ball. When you're playing catch, what's the flight of the ball that you're looking for? What are you feeling?
Straight. I want it straight. Especially my four seam. I want the four seam straight. Like I want to throw it as like a dart. And then two, same thing. I know it's going to move, so try to straighten two seam out. Wow. When I don't get moved, that's when it's the most effective.
Wow, that's really interesting. What do you do for a long toss? Like how far back are you going when you're on a normal kind of throwing day? Maybe not a mound day.
Usually, probably like 200 feet. I'll do that, and just for my shoulders, especially, and then the backspin the ball, just to keep my shoulders not going downward. Okay. But I love long tossing just because you have to stay behind the baseball. It teaches you to keep your fingers on top, let the ball fly straight. And then when I start to move in, I start trying to throw them a little harder on a line. So that kind of teaches the hand speed with that. But yeah, long toss, I love long toss just for those reasons.
I think it's interesting though, because if you're at 200 feet, like your two seamer has got to be, running pretty far. But
sorry, only four seamers. I don't long toss with the two seamer.
Okay, interesting. So just four seamers from 200 feet.
Yeah.
But I still like we've heard this from everybody we've talked to, and I think it's fascinating. Everybody has said they're feeling behind the baseball, they're visualizing a straight path. No matter what the ball ends up actually doing, like the feel and the visualization is straight behind the baseball, pulling straight down through it.
That's it, because that's where the most of your command's going to come from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's great. So look, for folks on the call, I hope you'll try that and try it in the Mustard app, see what happens with your mechanics. I want to get to as many user questions as we can, and audience questions. We've got a bunch, so for tonight, I'm gonna read them and try to get through as many as possible. But I'm keeping an eye on the Q&A and chat box here, so folks, please feel free to fire more away. Sam, I saw you put one in live. I'm gonna get to a number of your questions here. In fact, I'll start with one from our friend Sam Smith. I think this could apply to any pitch, Aaron, but Sam wanted to know, what were some of the struggles you had when developing your two seam? Was it hard to trust your grip on the two seam initially?
For sure. It was very hard to trust my grip just because I always was a pitcher whose fingers were spread out a lot, and I choked the ball on that four seam. To turn to the two seam, my fingers they felt so close, and I just didn't have the feel to begin with for it. And I didn't really know where the ball was going. So it just took time, honestly, to really get the feeling of that. If it was practicing it out in the outfield, throwing flat grounds, just to try to get a feel for it, watching other pitchers do it, talking to other pitchers doing it, and then coming to the fact that it's not a sinker and it's a more of a runner. So to make it a runner, so that, and I came to that conclusion to just try to backspin it, because the times that I did just try to, dot that pitch down and away or up and in to a lefty, I had feedback of guys like, gosh, that ball moved so much. I'm like, I didn't even see that ball move. So,
Wow.
Well, I'm just going to try to start backspinning it. Start backspinning it as best as I can and let the movement take care of itself.
That's super interesting. I think we got to show people, Cole. If you get a chance, can we pull up some of the clips of? We got some like pitching ninja clips of two seamer highlights of yours, and the idea that you're not thinking about making these balls move is fascinating to me, just because they move so drastically.
Simplify it. Just simplify it. Try to throw the ball straight.
Yeah, so there's the overlay. Here's a cutter versus a two seamer, just so we see what we're talking about here. And actually, even on this one, Cole, if we go back to release point, I think you can kind of see what Aaron's talking about mechanically. I mean, the mechanics between these two pitches are exactly the same, right? And you can only achieve that if the feel in the pitcher's mind is exactly the same, I would think. Is that fair, Aaron?
That's correct.
Now we got a question in the chat just now. Do you ever think about pronating your arm while you're throwing that two seamer? But no. So you're just letting it rip, feeling right behind the baseball.
Yeah, feel right behind it. Yeah, that's all it is, guys. Simplify it. Throw it just like your four seam. The grip might be different. Although that is the one I throw, so the runner, not the sinker. So the sinker may be different. Some guys do try to pronate it a little bit.
Okay.
But for me, if you want that run, just try to throw that thing straight.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Well, kind of changing gears a little bit. One thing we talk about a lot, and we give a lot of instruction on, is like warm-up routines, developing a routine that's right for the individual, but making sure we're doing things that are health first. We got one question, just, could you take us through kind of what a typical warm-up routine is for you?
On game day?
Yeah, let's do game day.
Game day, I try to drink about a gallon of water before the game, because the last thing I want to worry about, especially if it's hot, is cramping. Do not want to cramp on the mound. So I do that, drink about a gallon of water, some electrolytes, and I actually sit on a lacrosse ball for probably about an hour and a half around my calves, my side of my legs, my hamstrings, my back, my glutes, just to kind of get any kinks out, any tightness out that I have or might have. And then start stretching a little bit and kind of, throw the med ball around sometimes, especially on night games. Got a little more time on night games. And then do some bands for my arms, my arm, my elbow, and my shoulders. And then go out and stretch a little bit outside. Not too much, not too crazy.
You doing any weighted ball stuff before game day?
No weighted balls. Actually I actually get a weighted ball if I find one in the training room and just kind of flip it like that. Just kind of like this, just to work on my curveball, like try to spin it hard, spin it with fingers. I've always done that. Sometimes I'll throw the weighted ball up. I'll sit on the training table and I'll throw it up and try to just snap my fingers with it.
So more of like a finger warm up. Super interesting.
Yeah.
Another related question from somebody on the call. There was one tip you would take from your routine that you would suggest a high schooler apply to their routine. What would it be?
Oh man.
Warm up routine.
Good question. High schooler. Well, when I was in high school, I would long toss on my game days.
Okay.
Stretch it out. But my bullpen wasn't that long. So I've changed over the years. I did that up until 2017. I stopped doing that. So to me, I just try to get to like 120 feet and just try to throw them straight, harder, straight, just to kind of take some bullets off, not throw so much on the start day until I get the bullpen. I do try not to throw too much in the bullpen. I think that's the biggest thing, because sometimes I'm sure most every pitcher has had a great bullpen, not a good outing. I promise you, it's not because you had a bad bullpen that you had a good outing, or it's not because you had a bad bullpen and you had or a good bullpen and had a bad outing. Vice versa, you know what I mean? The superstition doesn't work. Right. So not try to be perfect in your bullpen before your game. Just try to get loose, try to spot the baseball up. Adam Wainwright was a perfect example. Just trying to get loose, because the game is a whole different ball game. Just because you're competing so much harder, the level of focus is a lot higher. Especially in high school games, it doesn't matter. The game's a game. Just try to locate your pitches and make sure you feel good.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it sounds like now in your routine, you're doing a lot of warm up before you throw a ball at all.
Yeah. Just sometimes, some days I'm tighter than others, right? So I don't move around that much anymore like I used to, but just to try to get in some, places, especially my legs. Just I sit on the crossbar for a while on my legs and my hamstrings, because I feel like I use my hamstrings a lot when I pitch. So I don't want to be tight anywhere in my hamstrings or my back. So that's why I do that, and that's why I drink a lot of water. So that's the last thing I want to worry about.
Related question from Brad Corcoran for pregame preparation. I think he's talking about in the bullpen here. Are you throwing a specific number of pitches now, or is it by feel?
It's by feel sometimes. In spring training, I throw about 30 to 40 just so I can get conditioned. And then I try to hone it down to 25. So, usually it's between 25 and 30 for the games.
Kind of building off that. Critical for you right now, starting pitcher, ace, you got to stay healthy through the year. And so the question from somebody in the audience, what are a couple of the major things you think about throughout the course of the season that you have to do in order to stay healthy for the whole year?
Yeah, I honestly take the day off of throwing after I pitched almost every time. So, if you think about that, you have, 33 starts. You're taking 33 days off of throwing. It's a month. It's a month off of throwing. So I used to throw all the time, and come to find out I don't feel as good when I throw every day. So I like the rest, especially if it's a day, or sometimes I take 2 days off. But guys, when you're y'all will get to this to this level one day when you're throwing every day in spring training. You're building your arm strength, you're building your conditioning of your arm and your body, and you're throwing so much, you don't need to throw every day. You're not going to lose it. So visualizing is a big thing too. I like to visualize my delivery, where I want to throw the ball. If I take the day off after I pitch, I usually throw a bullpen the next day. So I try to visualize in the bullpen what I want to do, visualize my delivery, even if I still do delivery stuff in the mirror at my house and windows. I mean, that's just kind of, I know all y'all do it too. When you hit, you do it, you take a bat and you hit in front of the mirror, swing the bat in front of the mirror, you pitch in front of the mirror. So still do that. So that's a big thing. I think command for pitchers, command comes from your delivery. Your delivery is nice and fine tuned. That's where the command is going to come from. So throwing every day, trying to throw it hard all the time, you don't have to. You don't have to. You've already built that arm strength up.
Yeah. I still practice my pitching mechanics in the mirror, and I haven't pitched in 15 years. So it sticks with you for. So the day after a start, you're not throwing. What are some of the things you're focusing on that day?
I run and do a workout. So I do a lower body workout. I do work out a lot during the season, and condition a good bit, just to keep my muscles and tendons hard, so I can sustain a long season. I'd rather, if I pull something, I'd rather pull a muscle than a ligament or a tendon, because pulling the muscle, guys, is not going to be as long, or it's not going to hurt as bad as pulling a ligament or a tendon.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And the visualization work, is that something, would you say you're getting some of that in every day, or is that, you talked about doing it on bullpen days and when you're sometimes doing mechanics work in the mirror?
Yeah, every day. I think, a lot of it's in the mirror. A lot of it's in the mirror, and feeling. I think, guys, if you're throwing bullpens, don't just throw a bullpen just to throw it. Try to think about your delivery. Try to think about fine tuning delivery, because that's where your command is going to come from. I don't like to talk about changing mechanics. I don't like the word mechanics as much as points in my delivery. So there's always going to be points that you have to work on in your delivery to get your delivery where you want it to be. Like I said earlier, if it's pointing your toe in so your hip can close, that's not changing your mechanics. That's just working on a point in your delivery. It's the stuff we have to do. Your body changes over the years. You get stronger, you get taller, you get bigger, you might get skinnier. Your delivery might change. So you have to kind of accept that sometimes. But if you feel it in that new delivery, it might not be a big change, then stick with that. Because I've been there. I've tried to replicate something I did, 7 years ago. It's not going to work, because the body evolves, your body gets stronger, something's going to change. So and I think that's the biggest part about if somebody likes to work out, keep their muscles strong and conditioned. If you do that, then you have a better chance of staying healthy. You have a better chance of succeeding and reaching your goals, because when you get hurt, you have to get back to normal. And that's what I always stress to myself. I don't want to do that again, because I've been on that boat in 2016. I was hurt. I got to get back to normal again.
Yeah. I think there's a ton of really valuable nuggets for folks in that answer. I mean, on the one topic, kind of being honest with yourself about your physical changes and development, I'd encourage folks to listen to Drew Brees' class from the other day, which is now up in the video on demand section. But Aaron, Drew talked a lot about the last few years of his career, really couldn't push the ball downfield anymore the way he used to be able to, but they actually had the best offense in the league a couple of those years, because he was just honest with himself. Okay, he's going to shred teams within 30 yards. He wasn't going to try to throw the ball more than 30 yards. Yeah.
He was the best at it. I loved watching him do it. He was the best. So There's different guys. There's different ways. Just like Drew probably said, there's different ways to succeed and get the job done. There's not one way to do it.
Yeah. Well, and I love your discussion of visualization too. It's something a lot of our folks get a lot of value out of and believe strongly. And we do, for anybody that hasn't tried it, we do almost weekly mental performance classes with Jason Goldsmith. And I encourage folks to join us for those. We talk a lot about visualization, and you hear one of the best on earth using it for himself right here. One last question. This one from Sam Smith again, and it's kind of staying on the mental side. For those rare days when you're not having a good game, how do you stay mentally focused and present?
Grind it out, dude. Grind it out. Believe that you're going to get through it. You know, if you're trying to throw, if the games are 7 innings, you know, and you're grinding out, try to throw 5, right? For us, if we're trying to, obviously we try to throw 9 innings all the time. But if we don't have it that day, try to get through 6. Do whatever you can to get through 6. Don't try to be too fine, because definitely been there. Nothing's working. Don't try to be too fine. Try to throw a quality pitch. Try to get the guy out early. There's days that definitely don't have it that have been the best days. You give up no runs. Give up no runs, right? You throw 6 innings, 7 innings, no runs. There's times that felt unbelievable. Everything's working, and I give up 5 runs. So that's just how baseball is going to go. But I think no matter what, you're not going to have it all the time. And really, you have to believe that you're going to get through it and that you can, and grind it out, compete. That's the name of pitching, guys, is compete. No matter what the outcome is, no matter what's going on. You can't control a bloop over the shortstop. You can't control a little, 20 hopper that goes through the 6 hole or the 4 hole. You can't control that. You made your pitch. So just keep telling yourself that. Keep making pitches. Don't get down on yourself just because hits are getting hit. Right.
There you have it. I'm glad we got to that question, because that's the most important thing, I think, for young athletes to learn, right? You're learning how to compete, whether you make it to where Aaron is or not. If you learn how to compete when you're a young athlete, you're going to take that with you for life. That's what we hope people get out of Mustard. Aaron, this was awesome. Thank you for doing it. Can't wait for the next one.
Thank you, guys. Me too. Thank you. Great.
For everybody listening, this is the start of the pitch type clinic. This is in the general live coaching tier. But if you want to join us for the next several weeks, where we're going to go through developing each pitch type, please make sure you subscribe to the premium clinic, and you'll get material from us each week. And Aaron, can't wait to have you back. Really appreciate this. Go get them the rest of the spring training. Look forward to the start of the season here.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.
All right, thank you all.